In 1853, on the bank of the Rhine, where the river drops over a cliff and becomes the largest waterfall in Europe, three men open a factory to build railway cars. The place is Neuhausen am Rheinfall, a Swiss town in the canton of Schaffhausen. The men are Friedrich Peyer im Hof, a railroad man who also sits in the Swiss parliament, Heinrich Moser, a watchmaking heir who had already made a fortune selling timepieces and dammed the Rhine to power his ventures, and Konrad Nier, an iron and steel industrialist. They are not gunmakers. They have no interest in becoming gunmakers. What they have is the Rhine Falls, a wall of falling water that can turn a turbine and drive a factory floor for free, and a country that is laying railway track as fast as it can across some of the hardest terrain in the world. They call the company the Schweizerische Waggonfabrik, the Swiss wagon factory. They build freight wagons and passenger carriages for the new Swiss rail network, and the work is good. There is one problem in the early years that says everything about how small this all begins. The factory has no track running to it. So the men keep a team of horses, and the horses drag the finished railway cars to the nearest station by road. That is the company that would, 164 years later, win the contract to arm every soldier in the United States Army. The turn comes from the government. In the late 1850s, the Swiss Federal Ministry of Defense goes looking for a modern rifle for its army. The wagon builders decide to compete. Peyer im Hof, Moser, and Neher pool what they know about precision metalwork, the same precision that railway equipment demands, and they back a design built around the Pre-Las Burnen system, a muzzle-loading rifle submitted for consideration in 1860. It wins. In 1864, the Swiss government places an order for 30,000 rifles. 30,000 rifles is a different kind of business than railway cars. It demands a different kind of company. So the three founders change the name. The Swiss wagon factory becomes the Schweizerische Industrie-Gesellschaft, the Swiss Industrial Company, 4 words that compress into 3 letters the world would later learn to read off the side of a pistol. SIG. The wagons do not stop. For more than a century, SIG keeps building railway rolling stock, supplying carriages for Swiss lines including the Gotthard Railway that tunnels under the Alps. It builds packaging machinery. It becomes one of the broad industrial firms that a small, neutral, mountainous country leans on to make the things it cannot import. But the rifle contract changes what SIG is for. From 1864 onward, the company that started with horses dragging train cars to the station is in the business of arming soldiers. For the rest of the 19th century and most of the 20th, SIG is the rifle maker to the Swiss Confederation. When Switzerland adopts a new service rifle, SIG is usually the company that builds it. The list runs across the country's modern history. SIG built versions of the Vetterli, the repeating rifle Switzerland adopted in 1869 that was years ahead of what its neighbors carried. In 1957, it produced the Sturmgewehr 57, the heavy, superbly made battle rifle that became the standard Swiss arm for a generation. In 1990, it delivered the SG 550, adopted as the Sturmgewehr 90, the rifle a Swiss conscript still keeps at home today. For more than a century, when a Swiss citizen soldier was handed a weapon and told to know it cold, the odds were good that SIG had made it. If you like stories about the companies behind the weapons that shaped the last 2 centuries, take a moment to subscribe to the channel. It is the simplest way to make sure the next one reaches you. Now, back to the Rhine. SIG does not become a household name on rifles, though. It becomes one on a handgun. And the handgun is born out of a problem the company creates for itself by being too good. In 1947, SIG introduces a pistol called the P210. The Swiss Army adopts it 2 years later as the Pistole 49. By any measure that matters to a shooter, The P210 is one of the finest service pistols ever built. The slide rides inside the frame rails rather than outside them, a reversal of normal practice that gives the moving parts a longer, tighter bearing surface and produces accuracy that competitive shooters still chase today. The tolerances are so fine that the pistol is slow to make and expensive to buy. Denmark adopts it. The West German border guard adopts it. It is a magnificent, costly, deliberate weapon, and that last quality, the cost, becomes the thing SIG has to solve. In the 1970s, SIG re-engineers the P210 into something the rest of the world can afford. The result is the P220, designed in 1975. It keeps the accuracy and the reliability and throws out the expense. It introduces a trigger that fires the first round with a long double action pull, and every round after that single action, the same operating logic Walther had pioneered decades earlier, now built to a Swiss standard. Switzerland adopts it as the Pistole 75. It is an excellent pistol with an excellent future, and SIG cannot sell it to almost anyone. The reason is Swiss law. Switzerland guards its neutrality in part by tightly restricting the export of weapons made on Swiss soil. A pistol designed and built in Neuhausen can arm the Swiss army and very little else, because the government will not let it leave. SIG has built a world-class handgun and locked itself out of the world market by being headquartered in the wrong country. The solution is German. In 1976, SIG goes looking for a partner outside Switzerland, a company on the other side of a border with looser export rules and a factory that can build and ship pistols to customers SIG cannot legally reach. It finds J.P. Sauer and Sohn, a gunmaker in Eckernford, Germany. SIG acquires a controlling interest. The two names are bolted together, and a brand is born that will outgrow both halves of its origin. SIG Sauer. J.P. Sauer and Sohn was no junior partner. Founded in the gun-making town of Seoul in 1751, older than the United States itself, it had armed German soldiers for generations and built pistols for the German military through the Second World War. After the war, its original works ended up on the wrong side of the line, in Soviet-controlled East Germany, before the company re-established itself in the West. By the time SIG came looking for a way around Swiss law, Sauer was one of the oldest names in German gun-making, and it had the factory and the freedom that SIG lacked. Under the new name, the P220 finally travels. It sells in Germany. It reaches Japan. It even arrives in the United States in the late 1970s wearing a borrowed badge, imported and sold through Browning as the BDA, the Browning Double Action. Before SIG Sauer is a name any American gun buyer would recognize. A Swiss design built in Germany, sold in America under a borrowed brand. The company that could not export a pistol from Switzerland had found a way out. In 1985, SIG Sauer plants its own flag on American soil. It opens a subsidiary called SIG Arms in Tysons Corner, Virginia, to import its pistols directly. Within 2 years, the operation moves to Herndon, and by 1990 it relocates again, this time to Exeter, New Hampshire, to begin building guns in the country rather than only shipping them in. The timing is not an accident. In 1984, the United States military had opened a competition that the entire firearms world was watching, and SIG wanted in. For over 7 decades, the standard sidearm of the American soldier had been the Colt M1911, John Browning's .45 caliber pistol, carried through 2 world wars, Korea and Vietnam. The pistols in the inventory were worn out. Officers described some of them as so loose they rattled. The military also wanted to standardize on the 9mm round its NATO allies used. So the Joint Service Small Arms Program launched the XM9 trials to find a replacement, and the requirements were brutal by design. Each pistol would fire tens of thousands of rounds. Each would be frozen, baked, buried in sand and mud, and dropped onto hard surfaces. 8 manufacturers entered: Beretta, Smith & Wesson, Heckler & Koch, Walter, Steyr, FN, Colt, and SIG Sauer. The field collapsed fast. Steyr was eliminated for reliability. FN and Colt withdrew. By the autumn of 1984, after destructive testing of around 35,000 rounds per pistol, only 2 designs were left standing: the Italian Beretta 92 and the SIG Sauer P, a pistol SIG had built specifically for the trials by widening the P220 to hold a double stack of 15 rounds, brought into the competition through the American defense contractor SACO. Both pistols passed. Both exceeded what the Army asked of them. In the soldiers' own words, the two outperformed the M1911 they were meant to replace. On the guns themselves, the two were nearly inseparable, and on the part that should have favored SIG, the price of the pistols, SIG actually came in lower. SIG and SACO underbid Beretta on the weapons by more than $9 million, and SIG lost. The contract was not awarded on the price of the pistols alone. It was scored on the total package, the guns plus the spare parts plus the magazines, and on that combined number, Beretta came in cheaper. The final tally was close enough to sting for decades. Beretta, 858, SIG Sauer, 847. On April 10, 1985, the United States Army announced that the Beretta 92 would become the M9, the new sidearm of every branch of the American military. The first order alone was for more than 315,000 pistols. SIG had built a pistol that beat the field, matched the winner, and undercut it on the guns, and walked away with nothing but a reputation. It nearly was enough. The pistol the Army passed over became a legend on its own terms. When Beretta M9 slides cracked during hard use and injured shooters, the United States Navy SEALs went looking for something tougher and chose the SIG P226, which they carried for more than 2 decades under their own designations, the MK24 and MK25. SIG won a separate military contract for a compact version, the P228, adopted across several branches as the M11 and carried by aircrew, military police, and criminal investigators who wanted a smaller pistol than the M9. The losing pistol armed the men the military trusted with its hardest work. Among shooters and across 100 action movies, the P226 became one of the most recognizable handguns in the world. The gun that lost the contract may have ended up more loved than the gun that won it. But the prize, the big one, the standard sidearm of the whole Army, belonged to Beretta. SIG had come in second in the most important pistol competition in the world. The number it would remember was the margin. Losing the M9 did not shut SIG out of the American market. It opened it. Through the late 1980s and the 1990s, the P226 and a compact version, the P229, became favored sidearms of American police departments and federal agencies, prized for the same reliability that had carried them through the Army trials. SIG Sauer built itself into a premium law enforcement brand in the country where it had just lost the biggest contract on offer. In 1994, it went a step further and designed its own cartridge, the .357 SIG, a round built to push a bullet faster than the standard police load, and sold the agencies both the gun and the ammunition to feed it. The company that lost the soldier's pistol had taken the policeman's instead. That American foothold was a large part of what made SIG Sauer worth buying when the Swiss parent decided to get out. Then the company that made the pistol nearly disappeared. By the end of the 20th century, the original SIG in Switzerland had decided it no longer wanted to be in the gun business at all. The conglomerate that had started with railway wagons was moving hard into packaging. The aseptic cartons that hold milk and juice on grocery shelves, a business with no controversy and steady margins. In 2000, SIG sold its Firearms operations entirely. The buyers were 2 German entrepreneurs, Michael Luke and Thomas Ortmeyer, whose holding company would gather an arsenal of historic names under one roof: Sauer, Blazer, the Mauser hunting rifle line, the Swiss Arms operation, and the American branch in New Hampshire. The original SIG kept going without its guns and is still going today. It is now SIG Group, one of the largest packaging companies on Earth, headquartered in the same town on the same waterfall where the wagon factory stood in 1853, posting billions in revenue-making cartons. The name on the pistol and the company that first carried that name had gone their separate ways. The American operation that Luke and Ortmeyer had bought was, at that point, barely alive. SIG Sauer's United States arm had shrunk to around 75 employees and was, by the account of its own executives, on shaky ground. It was a small importer eking out thin margins on pistols still largely built with German parts, sitting on a famous name and not much else. In 2004, a man named Ron Cohen took over. Cohen was an outsider to the American gun trade. Born in 1963, he had studied engineering at the Technion in Israel and served in the Israeli Defense Forces before moving into manufacturing. He arrived at a struggling firearms company in New Hampshire with no patience for the way it had been run. Where the previous leadership had managed the business from a distance, Cohen moved into the plant and involved himself in every part of it. Former employees describe a chief executive who was a phone call or a short walk away at any hour. His plan was simple to state and punishing to execute. Cut the cost of building each gun and build far more of them. He pushed component manufacturing to suppliers in India and Israel who could machine parts faster and cheaper than the German shops SIG had relied on, without giving up the quality the name demanded. He widened the product line. He chased law enforcement and commercial buyers as hard as the company had ever chased anything. Within a few years, sales had tripled, the head count had climbed into the hundreds, and then past 1,000, and the dying importer had become one of the fastest-growing gun makers in the country. In 2014, the company moved into a new headquarters in Newington, New Hampshire, and adopted a slogan that told you exactly how it now saw itself. Born in Europe, perfected in America. And Ron Cohen wanted the prize that had slipped away in 1985. If this is the kind of story you came here for, subscribe to the channel before we go on. It tells us which companies to dig into next, and it keeps these documentaries coming. Now to the gun that changed everything for SIG. The gun was the P320, and it was a different animal from anything SIG had built before. It reached the civilian market in January 2014. It was striker-fired rather than hammer-fired, framed in polymer rather than metal, chambered in 9mm, with a steel slide and a short recoil action. None of that was unusual on its own. Glock had proven the polymer striker-fired formula years earlier. What made the P320 different was a single idea that ran to the heart of how a pistol is defined and how it is regulated. In almost every handgun, the serialized part, the piece the government counts as the firearm, is the frame. The P320 moved the serial number off the frame and onto a small internal chassis called the fire control unit, the part that actually holds the trigger and the firing mechanism. That unit could be lifted out and dropped into a different grip module, a different size, a different caliber, a different barrel length, and it was still, legally and mechanically, the same gun. One pistol could be a full-size duty weapon in the morning and a compact concealed pistol in the afternoon, with the registered heart of it carried straight across. SIG had built configurability into the legal definition of the weapon itself. That idea arrived at the exact moment the United States Army went shopping again. Around 2011, the Army had begun planning to replace the Beretta M9, the pistol that had beaten SIG in 1985. The program was called the Modular Handgun System, and the word Modular reads almost like a description written for the gun SIG was already building. The Army wanted a sidearm that was lighter, more accurate, more reliably ambidextrous, and configurable to fit different hands and different missions. The P320 answered the requirement as if it had been designed to the spec. The competition ran for years and narrowed to a handful of the largest names in the industry: SIG Sauer, Glock, FN America, and Beretta USA. the holder of the title, fighting to keep it. On January 19, 2017, the United States Army announced that it had chosen the SIG Sauer P320. The contract was worth up to $580 million. The full-size version became the M17. The compact version became the M18. At a unit price reported as low as around $207 per pistol, SIG had done the thing it failed to do 32 years earlier. It had won the standard sidearm of the United States military, and it had taken it directly from Beretta, the company that beat it the first time. Ron Cohen, the outsider who had walked into a near-dead importer of 75 people, stood at the largest gun show in the world and said the company was humbled and proud. The margin from 1985 was closed. SIG had come back to the same competition against the same opponent and finished first. Winning the pistol would have been enough to define most companies. SIG was not finished. While the M17 and M18 were rolling out to American troops, the Army was opening a far larger competition, the kind that comes along perhaps once in a generation. The standard infantry rifle of the United States had been some version of the M16, and its shorter cousin the M4 for more than half a century, all of it firing the small, fast 5.56 millimeter round adopted in the 1960s. The Army had concluded that the round was reaching its limits. Modern body armor was getting good enough to defeat it, and a soldier who could not punch through an enemy's armor at distance was a soldier in trouble. The military wanted a new rifle, a new automatic weapon to go beside it, and hardest of all, an entirely new cartridge with the power to defeat armor at range. This was the next generation squad weapon program. It asked the competitors to deliver three things at once: a rifle, a machine gun, and the ammunition that fed both, all built around a heavier 6.8 millimeter projectile that had to fly faster and hit harder than anything in the standard inventory. The engineering problem at the center was the cartridge. Designing ammunition was not new ground for SIG. It had built the .357 SIG round for police 2 decades earlier, but that was a pistol cartridge for the firing range. The Army was asking for a rifle round powerful enough to matter against a protected enemy at distance and still light enough for a soldier to carry by the 100, a far harder thing to build. To drive a heavier bullet to those velocities, the round had to contain pressures that would wreck a conventional brass case. SIG's answer was a hybrid case, a design with a steel base joined to a brass body, patented to survive pressures ordinary ammunition could not. That case was the core of SIG's entry, the part that made the rest of the cartridge possible. SIG submitted its designs in 2019 and built out a manufacturing and ammunition operation to back them. It was competing against General Dynamics and Textron, both fielding inventive weapons of their own. The prototype phase ran 27 months. On April 19, 2022, the Army chose SIG Sauer. The contract ran 10 years and was valued at up to $4.5 billion. SIG would build the rifle, designated the XM7 based on its MCX Spear to replace the M4. It would build the automatic rifle, the XM250, based on its light machine gun to replace the M249, and it would supply the 6.8 millimeter ammunition, the SIG Fury cartridge, that both weapons fired. The program even made suppressor standard issue, mounted on the weapons as delivered, and paired the guns with a smart optic that ranges the target and calculates the shot. The rifle picked up one small telling complication along the way. SIG had first called it the XM5. In early 2023, the Army renamed it the XM7 because the M5 name ran into a trademark held by Colt, the company whose 1911 had been the American sidearm SIG's pistol spent decades chasing, and whose M16 lineage SIG's rifle was now built to replace. In May 2025, the weapons cleared their final hurdle and were formally type classified. The experimental designation dropped from their names. the rifle became the M7. The machine gun became the M250. In 1864, a Swiss wagon factory won the contract to build the rifle of the Swiss Army. In 2022, the company that grew from it won the contract to build the rifle of the American one. The same firm that armed the Swiss soldier with a repeating rifle in the age of horse-drawn freight now armed the American soldier with the weapon meant to carry him into the middle of the 21st century. The new weapons did not arrive without argument. The rifle and its ammunition are heavier than what they replace, and the magazine holds 20 rounds where the M4's holds 30, trade-offs the Army accepted in exchange for range and armor penetration. Early testing turned up problems with accuracy and with gas and fumes venting back toward the shooter, issues that SIG and the Army worked to fix before fielding. Soldiers and analysts still argue over whether the heavier round and the lighter basic load are the right bet for the next war. The contract and the judgment behind it will be tested for years by the people who carry the result. By the mid-2020s, SIG Sauer's American operation had grown into one of the largest firearms manufacturers and the largest firearms exporter in the United States, employing thousands of people across New Hampshire and supplying militaries and police forces around the world. It had expanded into ammunition, optics, and suppressors, selling not just guns, but the systems built around them. The 75-person importer that Ron Cohen walked into in 2004 had become a defense company the United States Army trusted with its rifle, its machine gun, its pistol, and the ammunition for all three. Underneath the run of contract wins, a serious question was following SIG home, and it had attached itself to the same pistol that carried the company back to the top. Almost from the moment the P320 reached the public, some owners reported that their pistols had fired without anyone pulling the trigger. The accounts came from holstered guns going off against a hip, from pistols dropped or jolted, and the people making them included a striking number of police officers carrying the gun on duty. SIG's position has been consistent and firm. The company says the P320 cannot fire without a trigger pull, that it meets and exceeds every industry safety standard, that it passed the Army's own punishing test program, and that the incidents trace to user error, faulty holsters, or mishandling rather than the design. SIG points out that courts have repeatedly excluded plaintiffs' experts who could not reproduce an uncommanded discharge under controlled conditions, and that close to 20 cases have been dismissed. The plaintiffs tell a different story, and some of them have convinced juries. In 2024, a Georgia jury awarded a holster injury plaintiff $2.35 million and found the design defective, a verdict upheld on appeal. Later that year, a Philadelphia jury returned an $11 million verdict. By early 2026, more than 100 lawsuits had been filed. Well over 150 people had alleged unintended discharges. Class actions had been certified or filed in several states, and the Attorney General of New Jersey had sued the company seeking to halt sales in the state. Several police departments pulled the pistol from service. A federal judge ordered the Chicago department to phase it out. After the death of an airman, an Air Force command suspended use of the M18. One detail sits at the center of nearly every case. The civilian P320 ships without an external thumb safety. The military M17 and M18, the versions the Army adopted, were specified with a manual safety. The Army has said it is making no changes to its pistols. SIG has issued no recall and keeps building and selling the P320 across its full line. The dispute is real, it is unresolved, and a company that spent more than a century selling the idea that a SIG is the gun you can trust is now arguing that case in front of juries. It is not the only shadow over the modern company. The same German connection that let SIG escape Switzerland's export laws in 1976 produced a scandal decades later. In the 2010s, German prosecutors charged that SIG's German division had shipped roughly 38,000 pistols to Colombia, using paperwork that falsely named the United States as the final destination, a violation of German export rules. Ron Cohen was arrested at a Frankfurt airport in 2018 and held for about 10 days. In 2019, he accepted an 18-month suspended sentence and a fine, and the German operation was ordered to repay more than $12 million. The arms business that the Beretta and Mauser stories both describe, the one where the product is always wanted and the rules are always being tested, did not spare SIG either. Set beside the others in this series, the SIG story has a different shape. It is not the story of a family that refused to sell, the way Mossberg and Beretta refused. The founding family is long gone from this company. The Swiss conglomerate that built the name walked away from guns entirely and makes juice cartons now. The pistol and rifle business passed to German investors, was nearly run into the ground, and was hauled back from the edge by an Israeli engineer running an American factory in New Hampshire. The headquarters moved across an ocean. The ownership changed hands. The original SIG and the modern SIG Sauer share little beyond 3 letters and a waterfall. What carried through was not a bloodline or a building. It was an instinct for the contract. 170 years of sensing what an army would need before the army finished asking. The wagon builders showed it in the 1860s, betting that a shop which could machine railway parts could machine a rifle barrel. SIG showed it again with the P210 and the P220, building pistols so good it had to invent a German partner to sell them. It came within 11 points of the American sidearm in 1985 and built a quieter business out of losing. It got there in 2017. And in 2022, it placed the same bet on the rifle of the next war. The irony is the part that lasts. SIG began as a company so hemmed in by Swiss neutrality that it could not legally carry its own best pistol across a border. It ends for now as the company that builds both the sidearm and the rifle of the most powerful army on earth, with a slogan on its website about being perfected in America and a courtroom fight over whether its most famous pistol is as safe as its name promised. It was born on a Swiss waterfall to build railway cars, locked out of its own market by its own country, beaten by Beretta and rescued by an outsider. And it now stamps its name on the weapons an American soldier carries into the next war. The wagons are gone. The horses that drag them are a footnote. The family that started it sold out generations ago, and the company that kept the name makes packaging. But the instinct for the contract survived every one of those changes, and it is still winning. That is SIG Sauer. The railway wagon maker that lost the first time came back and took the contract to arm the United States Army. If you made it to the end, thank you for watching. Subscribe to the channel for more stories about the companies that built the world's weapons, and take a look at the 2 videos on your screen right now. Both were chosen to be your perfect next watch.